What is going on in the news and with Donald Trump and Macy's? I have some very unique perspective on firsthand experience with Macy's and actually firsthand experience with Donald Trump, believe it or not. My name is Matt Schuster. I am 42 years old. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. For 15 years, I worked for Macy's department stores. For 12 of those 15 years, for 13 of those 15 years, I was an executive in the security department for Macy's department stores. From 1999 to 2003, it started with Macy's in 1996 as staff. Worked my way up, got my first executive job 2 years later, about a year and a half later in 1997, as a junior executive as a regional investigator, and I was promoted to security manager in 1999 in Macy's Herald Square. And I eventually, very quickly, actually worked my way up to director of security, senior executive position in Macy's Herald Square. Where I was the director of security for the Center Core store inside the store, which consisted of fine jewelry, fashion jewelry, cosmetics, and women's shoes. When I was there, that building alone made anywhere from 600 million to 850 million per year, depending on which year. I was responsible for a part of the store that generated about 300 to 450 million of that, on top of my security responsibilities for the building. We also played a large part in the planning of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, the Macy's fireworks. Post 9/11, though I wasn't there on that day, I was there for the immediate aftermath in dealing with a flagship location, a terrorist location, a prime terrorist location, post 9/11. I have a very unique perspective because I've been there, I've lived there. And what I have seen happen in the media in regards to Donald Trump and Macy's pulling their support for him under the guise of he's insensitive, he's racist, it doesn't fly. When in fact, you look at the title of my video, I will show you Macy's is the one who is indeed the racist. How their policies are mirrored in racism. How what they sell and how they sell it is designed to hurt minorities, poor African Americans, poor Hispanics. How they contribute to the problem of illegal immigration, all at the same time while abusing their own staffs, not only within the security department, but every single person who works for that company. As I said, I started with Macy's in 96. I ended up in Herald Square in 1999. Where everything happens, you're dealing with the principals of the company, the president of Macy's, the CEO, the chief financial officer, the head of Federated, who is the parent company, is also there. It is where policy is made, it is where policy is discussed, it is where everything happens for Macy's nationwide and even locations outside the US, i.e. Guam, and there's a few other locations, Puerto Rico. All policymakers come out of that building. Now, being in the security department, director of security is a daunting task, obviously. And everybody probably believes, well, all you do is, you catch shoplifters and that's all. But, it's much deeper than that. And I find it pretty much hilarious, the stance that Macy's has taken, knowing what Macy's does to hurt minorities. And you don't have to go any further than to just walk in their doors in any urban location. Brooklyn, Queens, Kings Plaza, shoot, even Staten Island. Any metro area, you walk through their doors, and what is the first merchandise you see? Urban wear, men's urban wear. Why? Well, if you're in an urban area, men's urban wear would make sense, wouldn't it? Not really if you care about the community. And Macy's is fully aware of the problems they cause by the merchandise they sell and the profits they make off of it. You look at these urban lines, Sean John, Rockaware, Fat Farm, owned by these rappers. And you look at the people wearing them and what those clothes represent when you see them out on the street. It is a uniform for dysfunction. When you wear your pants 3 sizes too big, shirts 3 sizes too big, hats on sideways, crazy. We sell it. Well, I shouldn't say we because I'm not there anymore. They sell it. It gets stolen at such a rapid rate, but they still make a profit off of it. Now, anybody coming in for a job at Macy's or any other company dressed in these clothes that they are so prominently displaying and pushing on these poor urban areas, you're certainly not going to hire them because it's not professional. You go to the upper end stores, the suburban stores, you walk into the men's departments on the door. What is the first thing you're going to see? Men's suits, men's shirts, men's ties. Men's ties like they just threw out of Macy's that Donald Trump was selling. See, they don't put Donald Trump's merchandise where the blacks and the Latinos and the poors and the poor white people live. No. See, they put this urban good crap, knowingly that they can push it on them. They could wear it. They're never really going to get it because you're never going to get a job pushing that because it is what it is. It is a uniform of dysfunction. When you come in wearing it, you're going to get a certain opinion of somebody dressed like that. Somebody coming in dressed like that for a job with their hat on sideways and their pants 3 sizes too big, with their underwear hanging out, with Fat Farm or Rockaware across an oversized sweatshirt, isn't getting a job. Now, I'm not saying that this merchandise should be banned from being sold. This is a capitalist society. I believe in capitalism. And if Macy's had kept their mouth shut about Donald Trump and let him keep selling his goods, then fine. But when you step out and you try to claim a moral high ground, you open yourself up for this. And it's deeper than just selling the goods. It's what they do around these goods. And I will tell you from my perspective, working in security alone, when you work in a high target store in an urban area, you become what's known as a target store. And what target stores have to do is they have to develop shortage plans to reduce shortage. Now, when I was in Herald Square and I first got there, that building was losing I believe the shortage was 28 million per year, one building. When I left, it was down to 14 million. But what I experienced in the loss prevention security department, I saw obvious racism, and not what you're thinking. Not in we're targeting black people, we're targeting minorities to arrest them, because that's not what my job was based on. See, when you work in a large company, you have a tiered review that's performance based, and however many stages of your review are a certain percentage of your overall score. So it's a 1 to 7 score. Year to year, you could have 6 or 7 different categories. And being a security executive, your biggest category, which is the 40% of your review, was overall shortage goal. How close you got to your shortage or beat your shortage without going over. If you go over your shortage goal, you're under expectation. You were under a 3, which would be a meet expectation, and then it would go lower. The lower under your shortage goal you go, the higher your score goes. So you could get a perfect 7 on that category based on how much under goal your shortage number comes up. Catching shoplifters, apprehensions never accounted for more than 5 to 10% of your overall review. So even if you caught 20,000 shoplifters over goal, it's still only a 7. And that 7 is still only accounting for 10% of your overall score. So there's no real motive. So putting aside the moral implications of racial profiling, it doesn't even make business sense to do it, because my goal was to catch whoever was stealing, not I want to catch as many black people or Mexicans or whatever race as possible. And it is ridiculous. The racism comes in because when you're a Target store, you have to sit before the principals of the company, usually twice a year. The president of Macy's, the CEO of Macy's, the chief financial officer, the chief operating officer, the big guys, the guys who run the company, and you're there presenting your shortage plan, and they're hammering you. Very similar to how police departments have to go into what's called ComStat or whatever kind of review any city calls it, and you basically sit there and you get hammered and get torn apart and have to explain your numbers. And I will tell you this, when I was in Herald Square, because they would go, well, where are the shoplifters coming from? What's going on here? Where are your problems? And I will tell you, we were catching from 99 until 2003, hundreds of illegal aliens shoplifting from us. And we were forbidden, and we knew this was a problem. This was a major problem. And we were just, we would prosecute them, turn them over. But the company didn't want to hear about it. We were trying to bring in other agencies, federal agencies, to try to help us, but they didn't want to hear it. Like, no, shh. It's like, no, but this is the problem. And they didn't want to hear about it. They acted like it wasn't an issue, shut up, and then they would try to blow up some minuscule issue and try to make it like that's the issue, when it never was, and it was provable that it never was. And we would then make arguments, because we would sit there spending all our time talking about these urban goods that were getting stolen. It was outrageous. Sometimes the shortage was near 90%. Yet they still made hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in profit off it, and they still do. And I made the point to the CEO, like, why is this getting stolen so easily? Because, the professionals, they would come in, they grab piles, and they're out the door. And I'm like, and I would say, why are we putting this merchandise next to the door? It is, the most expensive stuff we sell, believe it or not. If you ever go look at the price tag on that ugly garbage, it's the most expensive stuff you'll see. $100 to $150 to $200 to $300 for a pair of jeans that are gonna sag off your ass. Oversized sweatshirts. And then we put it there in urban areas where we know we're prone for shoplifting. Why do we do this? No, 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 no. We want them to see it. We want them to see it. We want them to see it from the street and come in. And the point I would make is, well, the only people, and it wasn't the only people, but the majority of the people wearing this merchandise, is it helping them? Are we going to hire, and I said this, are we going to hire somebody coming in one of these full fat farm suits? One of these? No. So why are we pushing it on this community where we're having so many problems? And then we have to, and then security has to get involved, and then we have to arrest them, and then we have to go through the process. And now they're in the judicial system, and then it just keeps going and going and going and going until everybody in the neighborhood has criminal records and nobody can get a good job. See, they don't want to push the men's suits and the khakis and the nice designer stuff, or the stuff at a moderate, reasonable price. No. They want to push the garbage that's going to keep them dysfunctional, because they know enough of them will come in and buy the stuff that they're still going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And they come in, they buy the stuff, and then they're wearing it out. And then any normal, rational human being who sees somebody wearing this stuff walking around writes them off the second they see them, because you think this person is a clown, they're insane, whatever. You wouldn't want them working for your hut. We don't want them working here, coming in for a job interview dressed like that. So how are we helping? But that's fine in a capitalistic society. I don't care. My problem is when you throw Donald Trump out for comments that you're saying is hurting poor minorities and immigrants, and you knowingly sell merchandise to them and prominently display it to them for your own profit, you're a bunch of hypocrites. And you know you're a bunch of hypocrites, and you know you're doing it. It's the plan. So for them to throw out Donald Trump for problems with for his comments about illegal aliens being lawbreakers, Macy's knows firsthand, because they have problems with the illegals. They have their problems with the organized retail crime. Anybody who wants to look that up, look up ORC, or organized retail crime, and you will see the tremendous business that is taken out, that is organized retail crime. Specifically, illegals coming in groups and gangs, stealing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of merchandise at a clip and shipping it back to Mexico, Central America, South America. It's an epidemic. Hundreds of millions of dollars lost. Organized retail gangs. But you see, the loss isn't enough to mitigate to wash out the profit, because they're still profiting enough off of it to keep selling it and keep doing it. And that leads me to my next point of where they lose the moral high ground. Well, if you're going to knowingly do these things, then why do you torture your staff about it? Why do you torture your loss prevention people? Why do you torture your salespeople and your sales managers about it? Because it's a form of control. It's a form of deliberately making people miserable, making them think they're not good enough and can lose their job at any time, and making an issue out of something, trying to blow up a problem and blame somebody for a problem that you know your policies are causing and that you directly are causing, and then pushing it off on somebody who's making middle management and below, right down to the cashier, salesperson in the sales department. And let me tell you firsthand what Macy's does to their minorities. works there. And I'll speak from my perspective of my people who work for me in Brooklyn, in Herald Square, in Jersey City. I will tell you this, my staff in Herald Square was at times 100% minority, mostly Black and Hispanic. Then you get people from the islands. I remember 3 white people in Herald Square were on staff total in my 5 years there. And this is a building that employs at any given time anywhere from over 100 to 250 security employees at any given time. Herald Square, just that one. Jersey City was a little bit more of an equal mix. I had everything in Jersey City. I had Blacks, Latinos, Jews, Black Israelites, Muslims. It was a very diverse mix. Brooklyn turned out to be the same thing, about 95% minority. So let me tell you what the life is like for the average security associate, security detective, security guard working in Macy's, and what it's like to work for Macy's in an environment, in these urban environments where you have high crime, high shoplifting. You can be processing anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 shoplifters a year in some of these locations. Some of them have jail cells. Herald Square, we had on-staff peace officers because we did the online booking and then we just called and shipped them off. But let me tell you what it's like, what these guys have to deal with, and ladies. Well, first let me start by this. If you all remember, about a year or so ago, President Obama, Attorney General at the time Eric Holder, and even Oprah got involved, told stories about being followed around department stores just for being Black. And it puts out this image of these racist department stores and these racist security people just out to get Black people. But if you notice what they did or didn't do, and that's give any type of details. They didn't say where it happened, they didn't say what had happened, they didn't say what the circumstances are for that behind their stories. And that's important, and I'll tell you why. Because in the retail loss prevention security business, everybody's promoted from within. And even if you're not promoted from within the company, you're usually taken from another company. Nordstrom, Lord & Taylor, what have you. Everybody trades everybody. So everybody knows where everybody is. And the fact that this guy went out there, the president, and gave these stories and riles everybody up without any type of perspective is quite problematic. Where you give the impression of the racist white guy following around the Black guy. Because this is what it's done in urban areas where you have nearly 100% minority staffs working honest security jobs. They gotta hide their faces. These guys working in these stores are coming from the same streets of the people they're apprehending. They're going back to Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and they hide their heads in shame. They have to hide what they do for a living like it's an embarrassment because it isn't cool. You're a sellout. You're an Uncle Tom. You're a Black buffoon. And the drug dealers and the thieves and the people stealing are the heroes. So these are guys who are working an honest job, coming in, working their 40 hours, 50 hours, whatever they have to do. And then they go home and they got to hide what they do for a living. And then you get the first black president of the United States and the first black attorney general of the United States. Go out and impugn them even more, make them have to hang their heads in shame. Because what they did, they go out and they make an accusation and they tell a story with no perspective. Because if I don't know if the stories are true or not. I have my doubts because they both seem like opportunists. But they owed it to black people and minorities to tell the full story. And here's why. Because most people in power positions have been promoted up from within. So whomever followed them around, if it happened, there's a good chance they're still with the company. They're still working in loss prevention. Or the ones who don't stay in loss prevention, by and large, become law enforcement officers. So if the company still exists where it happened, doesn't he owe it to everybody to let the company know, hey, this happened to me in my younger years. I felt like I was being followed because of the color of my skin. Doesn't he owe it to everybody to make sure that's not happening? Doesn't he owe it to the company if they didn't know about it, that it happened? Doesn't he owe it to everybody to find out if this was? Because let me tell you something. You might think it might happen 20, 30 years ago. Oh, what are you going to do about it now? The person who allegedly did it can be found very easily. Trust me, they can. You ask anybody who's worked in a box retailer, any type of retail store that had any type of undercover loss prevention security, and you just ask them, hey, did they have undercover security back then? And if they did, ask them about some of the guys. Like, you remember anybody who worked there, anything? And I guarantee you, if they don't remember a name, they'll remember something about them, incidents that happened. Oh, it was crazy back then. They used to fight and they used to have these. I guarantee you, these people, there's a good chance they're still working. They're still working in the industry, moved on to loss prevention, moved on to, the law enforcement. They both owed it to society to say, what were the parameters? What happened? No, that's not what they did. They put out this big accusation and lets everybody's imagination run wild, and nobody puts any perspective into it. And when you consider how many stores and malls there are in this country, and most of them have loss prevention, millions and millions and millions of people either working, have worked in this industry, moved on at one time, are still working, have been impugned by the president, the attorney general, and even Oprah. And when her story was put to the test, it was like, that's complete nonsense. It never happened, and she just wanted it to go away. And you might say, oh, well, maybe the companies are out of business. That it didn't matter. It does matter. Because that's an example of, if the companies it happened in are now out of business, well, that's a great example how racist policies don't work. Because where are they now? Out of business. But when this happened, and I asked, I still have contacts there, do you think Macy's said anything to these people? To their loss prevention, to their security people? Hey, we got you. Nope. Quiet as a church mouse. Quiet as a church mouse. Macy's employs thousands of minorities in all departments. But in loss prevention and security, especially a lot of minorities, which is a good thing. But they leave them to be hung out to dry They don't say a word. And then when they come in to do their job, they're pushed around and bullied and not given the respect they deserve. And then when they go home, they get to hang their heads in shame. And they have to hide what they do for a living, making an honest living, stopping people from stealing, answering medical calls, protecting people. They get credit for none of that. So Macy's puts out this merchandise to be sold. They hire minorities to go catch the minorities who are stealing the urban goods, because that's who mostly steals those urban goods, is the minorities. I'm not saying minorities only steal. Everybody steals. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is Macy's is a bunch of phonies who will hang out their own minorities people, their own minority employees out to dry. Let them be impugned in their own neighborhoods, all for their own profit, mind you. They know they're doing it. They know the merchandise they're selling is bad. They know it doesn't help the communities that they're supposedly, quote unquote, serving. Yet they do it anyway. Yet they want to take a moral high ground against Donald Trump because he made negative comments about illegal immigration. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I can't tell you how many of my detectives would come into my office and just like, you know, I locked up 3 people from my neighborhood. Like, I'm finding it harder and harder to live there. What do you say to somebody like that? And this happened repeatedly. Company didn't care. Just keep pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out. And the company really doesn't fight back against these because they want against these, because that was a racial profiling play that Obama and Holder were pulling at, the race card, which is where Macy's wants to keep it. See, they'd rather their people look like racists. Here's why. Because Macy's only pays out. If somebody tries to come at you with a BS lawsuit for Macy's, security related, they immediately offer up a $7,000 payout. 98% of the time it's taken. If a legitimate mistake is made, whereas somebody accuses somebody, stops somebody for shoplifting and they don't have it, i.e. they thought they saw something that they didn't see, they ditched it, whatever, there's going to be a larger settlement. Not what you think it would be, 25, 30 grand usually, but it's 7 grand a pop if somebody comes with a BS lawsuit. When you're making hundreds of millions in profits off that merchandise, what's worth it to you? So everybody's up in arms that, you know, the loss prevention security people are a bunch of racists. But because it keeps the focus off the real problem is, why are you selling this garbage to us to begin with that does nothing but move us as a society backwards, moves poor people backwards, doesn't help them get a job, doesn't help them advance, gives other people a negative image of them, but yet they push them like, this is cool, buy this, sell this. They'll let it get stolen because they know they're going to sell enough of it to mitigate it, and they'll let their overall security look like a bunch of racists. And who takes the brunt of it? Because I went home to the suburbs as a white guy. It was their poor, it was their minorities, the blacks and the Latinos and the Indians. We had a lot of Indians that worked for us as well in security, believe it or not, that went home and had to take the brunt of this, had to hide their heads in shame. They didn't care. They didn't care. Because it's a switch. It's a look at the shiny object over here. Don't look at this, because this is where the real problem is. We don't want you to look at that, because we're all profiting over here. I think this is the problem. Yeah, you guys are all just a bunch of racists and this and that and the other thing. No. Don't look at the real problem over here. And if you try to show it to us, we're going to shut you down. No. You can't even bring it up in the meetings with these people. You can't even mention it. Now let me tell you what I know about Donald Trump. In 2004, I had the opportunity to work directly with Donald Trump. He filmed a television commercial that ran on Black Friday. Black Friday, the biggest retail day of the year. Everybody knows what the hell Black Friday is. In our Jersey City location when I was there, because it was the Federated Prototype, that's where they wanted to do everything. Donald Trump was doing this as a personal favor for the CEO of Macy's. He wasn't making any profit. This was a personal favor he was doing for this company, for Macy's. They had live dress rehearsal all night, director, the whole movie set. Donald Trump shows up about 7 a.m., right when he was supposed to. He gets out. I meet his personal security. And I'm like, I'm going to take you to your green room to let him know who I am. I had brought in extra outside contract guards because this is a big deal. And we had done, I was familiar with doing events over in Herald Square, so I knew how to handle this. So I had set up his green room in the store manager's office. And on the way up, I introduced myself to him. Nice to meet you. Very professional, very cordial. We're walking in. He goes to his security guy, who I guess is also his personal assistant. Give me the head of Estee Lauder on the phone right now. This is at 7:05 in the morning. He hands him his cell phone, dials it for him, hands it to him. Head of Estee Lauder on the phone. I will say this about everybody who makes fun of Donald Trump. Underestimate that man at your own peril. And I'm not saying I'm supporting him or I'm voting for him. I listen to what everybody has to say. But anybody who thinks that man is dumb or incompetent, you do that at your own peril. Because I had the opportunity to see that man operate behind the scenes, where I got friendly with his guard that day, with his personal security, and we stood at the doorway, and it was just him in the green room alone. Okay, this isn't The Apprentice where the video cameras are on. This isn't some TV show. This isn't some media interview. This isn't where some camera crew is following him around. Okay, and I'm not somebody in a position where he's going to put on a show for me or his bodyguard because we might be in earshot distance. This is the real Donald Trump. And I will tell you this, that guy commands respect. That guy tells you how you're going to do, what's going to be done, and how you're going to do it. And he does it in a way where you're not going to tell him no. And so when I visualize him dealing with maybe a foreign leader, that's what I want in my Oval Office. Not saying that I'm going to vote for him, I'm supporting him. I haven't made a decision yet. But I'm sure not going to make fun of him or underestimate this man. Because I got to spend a good 5 hours with this guy. And it was impressive. It was something that made a mark on my life. Because this is a guy who doesn't take no for an answer. This is a guy who only cares, who's results driven. It's like, what is the end result? How are you going to get there? This is a guy who doesn't get told, who won't be told by anyone how he's going to do something. We walked him on the set. The director comes up and tries to start explaining to him what's good. He puts up his hand and he goes, shut the F up. I'm giving you 2 takes per scene. You're going to do it my way, or I'm getting another guy, or I'm going to get another director in here in 10 minutes. Are we clear? Yes, sir. And then I watched that man work with these actors in a way where he didn't belittle them, he didn't embarrass them, he was self-deprecating for the commercial. It was a commercial where he was walking out and an old lady realized who he was and hits him with a cane. And he's like, no, you got to hit me harder. He's like, kick me in the shin. He kept trying. He's like, no, you really got to let me have it. So the stories you hear about him being uptight, it ain't true. It's just not. And knowing it and talking to a security guy who was a real nice guy, but wow, would you not want to mess with this guy? And not to look at him. Not to look at him. Okay, to look at him, he just looks like a regular average guy in a suit. But not that he said he did anything, but you can usually, when you get the gist. You're not standing next to Donald Trump, okay? Unless, he isn't recruiting out of Macy's, we'll say that, for his personal protection and assistance. I will tell you that. There was a realness to that guy. There was a straightforwardness to that guy. And there was a generosity to that guy, Mr. Donald Trump. He did that commercial at 7 a.m. coming from where he was coming from. I think he flew in that day as a personal favor. And for me to see Macy's treat him like that after the thing, and I know he's done other things for that company as well. So for him to throw him under the bus and say, oh, this is a horrible thing what he said, they don't believe it. They know it's not true. I know for a fact that they know it's not true. So no, Macy's, you're racist. I know you're racist. You know you're racist. You know the merchandise you're selling in these urban areas are designed to keep these poor minorities in these poor areas and to keep them poor and to keep them to a point like that's what they want to get. That their next goal is just to get the next Sean John, Fat Farm, whatever this garbage is, that you're going to sell them and make them think they need to steal, okay, or entice these organized retail rings to come in and sell back off to Central America, South America, Mexico. So you'll want that because that makes your minorities go and chase other minorities, and it doesn't address the real problem. Oh, look at these theft problems. Well, what are you selling this garbage for to begin with? If you're so concerned about Donald Trump's comments about meth, why would you sell this stuff, which you know is diametrically opposed to their advancement, to helping them? Because you're not going to hire them wearing it. We never would. So if you're not going to hire somebody who's going to wear that, okay, at $100 to $200 to $300, not that everything you sell, you need to be able to wear to a job interview. Not saying that at all either. But why would that be what you prominently display at your doors and push on these people? It's disgusting. And for Macy's to try to claim the moral high ground here is absolutely horrendous. And I can't believe this has gone on for this long, because I could probably go on for another 3 hours talking about the abuses that Macy's does on all their employees. Okay, Macy's wants to act like they're this community. They're not. They are there to keep you in debt. And they do that by pushing their credit policy, their credit card on everybody. When the economy crashed in 2006 and nobody was out of money, they ramped it up harder. on their employees to open up credit cards. If the employee doesn't open up enough of credit cards at Macy's, they get fired. And people don't have money, but they don't care. They're approving anybody. Because what happens when you miss your first bill? What happens to your interest rate? Oh, that's right, it goes up to 31%. And that's where Macy's makes a lot of their money, off their credit card, off late charges, off keeping you indebted. They also try to figure out who the hoarders are at Macy's. You ever watch those shows on hoarders? And you see the walls of merchandise. How many times do you see that red star on that Macy's bag? Piles and piles and piles and piles of Macy's merchandise. And you know why that's there? Because they got it at the cheap. And you know how they get rid of their cheap merchandise? They start making their employees keep client books in their moderate sportswear areas and where they get the cheaper clearance. And they start calling these people who they know have problems, who can't resist. Say, hey, we got all this new stuff. And then they come in and they buy up all this stuff just to get them in the store. And then they go home and they know they're hurting them. They know they're helping destroy their lives and their families' lives. Macy's knows it. But they don't care because they're making money. They're making money. And they're keeping you in control. And to give you the last example of how Macy's keeps you in control and their employees in control, I want to tell you about a conference, one of the last conferences I went to there before I left. And it was one of the final nails in the coffin for me. When the head of marketing and retailing, her name is, I'm not sure, I can't remember her exact title, but she's a big, big shot in the company. Sue McMahon, her name is. She stood up at a conference in Newark, because I used to fly, and there was thousands of people. All the Macy's, a lot of Macy's executives from all over the country. And she stands up on mic for her presentation. She goes into this story about her brother and acceptance. And it was under the guise of, I think, of almost diversity, but it's not really what it was about. She tells a story how her brother announced at some holiday function that he was going to change, that he was going to get a sex change operation and become a woman. Now, I'm not making any judgments on transgenders. That's not the point of this. And she said, wow, that upset me at first. It hit me. And then I just said, oh, that's his choice. Let him do it. And I never said a word. And I just accepted it, and we're all just happy, and we accepted it. Well, what a beautiful story. But is it really? What's the point of that story? Well, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not making any judgments on transgenders or anything like that. But I know if I told somebody I was going to get a sex change operation, or somebody in my family, somebody I cared about said, hey, I'm going to get a sex change operation, I'd at least be like, you sure? How come? I at least want to know. No, not from them. This is a person making major policy. So what's the message? Don't question, just accept. Conform to what we tell you. Conform to what we... Don't think for yourself. That's why they changed the dress code. That's why everybody wears black. Because they're trying to make these people into machines. And they harangue them and berate them and put them on warning and fire them when they don't. Don't conform. Don't question. Conform. And I know that sounds very Big Brother, but it is what it is. What is the point of telling a story like that? That is a person that is making major policy for the company, telling a room of 1,000 executives, my brother was going to have his you-know-what cut off, and whatever. I didn't think enough to even follow, see what was going on in his mind. Hey, maybe it was the right move, but you wouldn't know that if you don't ask. Macy's has the right to do whatever they want to do as a company. I'm not saying they should be forced to stop selling anything. What I'm saying is you lose the moral high ground, okay, when you call out Donald Trump, try to make him into some kind of racist for saying something that is factually correct, for saying something that you have, the company, quote unquote, has a problem with themselves, but that problem is masking the real problem which you're profiting off of knowingly. So I wrap it up here. No, Macy's, you're the racist. Thank you for listening. If you lasted this long, I'd be surprised if you did. Take care.